All right, we're up to video 3 and time is flying. Today's topic is all about how fiber can feed our gut microbes. And we did just touch on that in the last video. And this is possibly the most fascinating topic for me. And I can't help but think about all those little guys thriving away inside our insides. This is Kirsty's jam, and I can't wait to hear it all from her. So I'm going to pass the time over to her, and I'll see you back here in a minute.
Okay, so here is a fun fact for you to get started as we delve into feeding our beautiful gut microbes. Did you know that you are really only about 10% DNA? The rest of your body is made up of microbes, made up of bacteria, fungi, viruses. There is just an absolute ecosystem going on within your body that possibly you don't know what's happening in there or what's going on. We have constantly been told, you know, it's your DNA, your mother had it, your grandfather had it, it's coming down the line, and really that's not true. It is actually what's going on with our microbial community that is what is either optimal health or what is causing us problems. So it's a really, really interesting fun fact, and certainly when you start to see this and you see it through this lens, then you start to get a real understanding of why fiber is so important. Now, these microbes that we have within our gut love fiber. They feed off fiber, they multiply with fiber. And as I said in the last video, without fiber and without the diversity of that fiber, they literally become extinct. Now, we think about the environment, we think about glaciers coming back, and we think about, you know, everything melting. We think about pollution, toxicity, the extinction of animals. But have you actually thought about, hang on a minute, if we are all microbial community and there is this depletion of this microbial community within our bodies, we are having the same effect as the environment internally within our body. We are seeing within people's gut microbiome extinction of these incredible species that do so much for us. So these species create these metabolites. Now, fancy word for basically these metabolites are what helps us to make our B vitamins, what helps us to make our hormones, our dopamine, our serotonin, our neurotransmitters. These metabolites, which are the byproducts of this beautiful bacteria in our gut, basically make our whole body function. So we need the bacteria to make the metabolites to have everything functioning, that well-oiled machine that we need our bodies to be. So if we're not feeding those microbes with this fiber, we're certainly not going to make those metabolites, and things are going to turn pear-shaped. So we have all sorts of different strains and species within our gut microbiome, and we have trillions of them, like 500 trillion of these different species within our gut. And so when we're looking at that, some of the words that you may have heard before are things like bifido strains, lactobacillus strains, and even things like Akkermansia. It's starting to come out and people are starting to understand. And look, let's just pick those top 3 because they're so interesting. Did you know that those bifido strains are linked to modulating autoimmune conditions? They're linked to making sure we don't get irritable bowel syndrome, we don't get ulcerative colitis, and we see an immense amount of research with that correlation between people who have low bifido strains, they have a high amount of those autoimmune conditions, and we see a prevalence of, you know, issues with regards to learning and development, autism, all of these sorts of things. Now, those bifido strains within our gut love to be fed fiber, and within that fiber, all of the beautiful, incredible compounds in that fiber. So, you know, there might be raw cacao, for example. It is an incredible food. It's got actually quite a lot of fiber in it, but it also has polyphenols in it. And these polyphenols are the compounds that feed those incredible bifido strains. Just fascinating. It just blows my mind. And those bifido strains are so supportive of our health. They make our B12, you know, like it's so important that we are constantly thinking about that. When we look at things like our lactobacillus strains, interestingly, that comes up all the time as being important for health, but it's not really fed by fiber. It's more fed by, dairy, and it's more fed by sugar components not found in fiber. But we see them in probiotics all the time, but we have to understand what feeds them. What are the compounds that feed these things that we know contribute to our health? So let's get to Akkermansia, the one that I talked about before. Now, Akkermansia is this ancestral strain. It's a strain that we see, in those primitive tribes with that diverse gut microbiome, because, research has gone there now. They've gone and looked at tribes like the Hadza tribe. They've surveyed and looked at their gut microbiome, and gosh, it's different to the microbiome of a city dweller. The diversity is just out of control for the Hadza tribe. They have so much, of those gut microbiome. They have a lot of diversity, different strains. Therefore, they had, their metabolites are just absolutely rocking, and they have incredible health, and they don't have disease. One thing that we see is they have a lot of Akkermansia, and Akkermansia in the research now is beautifully correlated with supporting and helping with diabetes. So in the research, we see that people that struggle with diabetes, when we look at their stool and analyze their gut microbiome, we can see that they either have an extinction of Akkermansia, which means there's none, absolutely none in their gut microbiome, or they have a very limited amount. And when there's that limited amount, we see diabetes is prevalent. And it's not just diabetes, it's heart health, it's, an imbalance in cholesterol, hormones, and so much more. So, that's only just touching the sides at how incredible our gut microbiome is and how important it is to feed it with this immense amount of fiber on a daily basis, consistently, and with so much diversity. So we've got an ecosystem living inside of us. There is so many plants and so many insects, all these sorts of things happening within our gut. And we have to remember they all require different nutrients, different fuel, different fibers. And that is the key. That is the absolute, secret that you need to know in how you are going to get to that space of optimal health that we absolutely want you to feel. So, for this beautiful challenge, have a look at your fiber, have a look at how you feel, and of course, investigate. You may need to get a gut microbiome test to see what's going on for you.
Thanks, Kirsty. Our bodies are so intriguing, and it's comforting to know that we have so much power over our health. Now, we're going to talk 4 more fiber-rich foods, and then we're going to make some lunch. Now, I love to keep lunch really simple because if there's an area of nutrition that I'm going to fall down in, it's lunch. So I like to have options that are quick and easy, ready to go. I do not like to stop the day to make lunch. I like to just have grab and go options. Now, ideally, lunch to me is just dinner leftovers. Dinner's where we typically put a bit more effort in, there's more veg, there's more nutrition. So why not make extra dinner with little to no extra effort and have some on hand for lunch? Now, alternatively, at the start of the week, I do sometimes like to spend just 10 to 15 minutes making up a big pot of rice or quinoa and a tray of roasted pumpkin or roasted sweet potato. And I just have that on hand in the fridge for lunches. And when you embrace the philosophy of JERF, just eat real food, then you let go of the necessity to always have a recipe, and you can just throw whatever you've got on hand on top of this, and it just is delicious. So I usually just throw on whatever salad veg I have on hand, some avocado, a squeeze of lemon, a pinch of salt, and that is delicious, and it's done in less than 4 minutes. This is one that I took on the road yesterday to visit a friend with. I was going to feed us both with this lunch. Obviously didn't have time to cut the tomato, but I threw it all together and off I went. And that's an example of how powerful it could be, because we could have ended up reaching for whatever she had on hand in a cupboard, or we could have been out on the road and gotten takeout or something, but that is so easy to do. And at 7.5 grams of fiber, I'm pretty happy with that too. Now, the other thing that I will often do at the end of the week, when I've got veggies that we haven't used, I will throw them in a saucepan, cover them with broth, add a grain or a legume and some seasonings, and that's the makings of a very delicious soup. And soups are really forgiving. If you know a few basic flavor tips, which I can share with you in the ebook, and then you can just portion it out and keep it in the fridge like this, ready to go. So that's a couple of ideas for your lunches. The one we're going to make today is one that I love to have on hand, and it's so popular for dinner at our house that we actually rarely do have it on hand for lunch. It's a tomato, basil, zucchini quiche made with Kirsty's diversity dough. Now, before we jump into making that, we're going to go into those 4 fiber-rich foods, which are all in the quiche. And again, there is a premix there for those who want to keep it easy peasy. All right, now here we are with our 4 new fiber-rich foods. We are going to fly through them a little bit faster this time so that we've got plenty of time for our quiche. Now, first cab off the rank is coconut flour, which is a massive 38% fiber. So a mere quarter cup of this is going to give you 11.4 grams of fiber. Can you imagine snacking on a muffin made from coconut flour and a little green banana resistant starch? That's going to give you a massive percentage of your fiber intake goal for the day. And that's a really good reason to master the art of baking with coconut flour. It can be a little tricky, so my general rule is to sub out up to a quarter of the flour in the recipe with coconut flour. If you're finding that your recipe is a little dry, because it can tend to suck a bit of moisture, then just add a little bit of your liquid back into your recipe. Now, apart from fiber, coconut flour delivers medium chain triglycerides, or MTCs, and iron. Now, MCT is a type of fat that's been linked to brain health, and we already know how important iron is. It's also rich in lauric acid, which is a type of fat that may attack those harmful bacteria and viruses and fungi, but we do need more studies to be confident around that lauric acid claim. Now, here we go with our green banana flour. We have already been speaking about green banana resistant starch. This is similar. It's made from the same ladyfinger bananas, but it's a baking flour. So it's still a good source of prebiotic resistant starch, but not as high as, obviously, the green banana resistant starch. So it's super rich in many nutrients, lots of vitamins and minerals like potassium, zinc, magnesium, manganese, vitamin E. 12% of it is fiber. So a quarter cup is going to give you about 4 grams of fiber. So we're going to move on to tiger nut flour. If you haven't heard of tiger nuts, you're going to be interested in this. Tiger nuts are not a nut. They're not a seed. They're actually a tuber. What's a tuber? A tuber is that thickened underground part of a plant stem, and it's used to store nutrients and a place where buds of new plants will grow. So it's actually naturally very high, incredibly high in nutrients and very powerful antioxidants. It's been used as a natural aphrodisiac, but we still need more studies to confirm its libido boosting effects on the body. Now, it's not unpleasant to eat. They're quite chewy, subtly sweet, a little nutty, and they've been used as both food and medicine. So this is basically just tiger nuts whizzed up into a powder. Lastly, we've got almond flour. Almond flour is just under a gram of fiber per tablespoon, and you typically do use quite a lot of almond flour when you're baking, so it really does add up. Now, the reason that almond flour is generally considered more nutritious than your most other regular flours, like your refined white flour, is that your refined white flour is quite high in carbs and quite low in fat and fiber. And that's going to give us those really big blood sugar spikes and very rapid and sudden drops in blood sugar. Now that's going to make us tired and hungry or hangry, and we're going to reach for those sugar-laden foods as well. So on the other hand, almond flour is quite low in carbs and high in fat and fiber. And that is the dream team and creates quite a low GI food, which gives us that sustained energy that we keep talking about. Now, it's rich in lots of nutrients, particularly vitamin E, which is a powerful antioxidant, known for reducing risk of Alzheimer's and heart disease also. It's remarkably high in magnesium, low in carbs, it's subtly sweet and has a variety of nutrients. Right, that's our 4 fiber-rich foods. Now let's go ahead and make our quiche. Now this quiche is a little bit special. It's made from a mix of fermented flours using Kirsty's diversity dough. What is diversity dough? Well, being a gut guru, Kirsty understands the importance of fiber on people's guts and is always looking for ways to help people nurture that gut. And so the diversity dough is a combination of carefully selected flours that are rich in fiber and resistant starch. But not just that, Kirsty's also added some very well researched and specific culture strains and yeast that are shown in the research to support optimum gut health. Now, testing shows that this diversity dough actually has 35 billion CFU, which is that beneficial bacteria. So why should we ferment? Well, some people have an imbalance in their gut or their metabolism, which means they need to keep their sugar and their carb content right down. But it's still essential that we have those fiber-rich foods, and that's where fermenting comes into play. Fermenting eliminates sugars like fructose and keeps that carb content right down while still preserving the incredible properties of the food. But the diversity starter is perfect for anyone who wants to gain or maintain that healthy gut and that gut microbiome diversity while still enjoying an everyday food that's full of fiber and resistant starches. So when these ingredients are fermented, the sugar content plummets down to 0. And all that's left are those prebiotic gut-loving fibers. So when you've got a food that might otherwise cause you some digestive discomfort, it's now literally transformed and is easy to digest. So you can make a loaf out of the diversity dough, pizza base, muffins, pancakes, the list goes on. Now, the recipe for the fiber blend is going to be in the ebook. Today, I'm using a premix, and it contains lots of those beautiful high quality fiber-rich flours that we've already been talking about. Now, all you need to do is open your starter from Cultured Wellness, empty it all into your bowl, and just add your warm water. So you've got 2 cups of warm water. Okay, so you're going to give that a really good mix until you can't see any clumps of that starter anymore. Okay, so now all we need to do is dump in this premix, and this is where that 35 billion CFU of beneficial bacteria meets the flour. So we're just going to give that a nice mix until it all comes together. And I am very likely going to need my hands in a minute. Don't be afraid to put your hands in there. Just make sure they're clean first. Use a wooden spoon. Metal ones tend to mess with the culture and the bacteria a bit. Okay, now this is where I'm going to get my hands in there. All right. Now, once you get your hands in, try to just bring it together as best you can. Make sure there's no dry bits at the bottom. Once you've done this, you're actually done. You're just going to leave it on the bench for a couple of days to ferment so you can use it. There we have it, guys. That is beautiful. That is done. So we're going to cover that. And we're not going to put it in the fridge. We're going to leave it out for a couple of days. Now, here's one that I did make earlier, a couple of days ago. Now, I have already used some of this, so usually there's a bit more in here than this. Now, what you can do, you can make 10 loaves out of this one starter. To do that, all you need to do is take out a cup of dough, firmly packed. Again, it's going to get messy with your hands. Just go for it. I am making a bit of a mess. I don't have my right measuring cup with me right now, so it's kind of getting a bit messy. But you're just going to add in 1 cup of that to your jar, and you're going to seal it off nicely and put it in the fridge. By doing that, you're going to stop that fermenting process because the ferment needs a warm temperature to keep fermenting. So you've already reached the stage where you like it, and you're going to pop it in the fridge to use next time you want to make something. So that is that, ready to go in the fridge. Now you can either use the rest of this to make a loaf, or you can use little bits and pieces to make all sorts of different recipes, and that's what we're doing today with our quiche. And that's how you make a quiche with a fermented diversity dough base. Now each serve of this quiche gives you more than 7 grams of fiber, and you'll get even more if you have a side salad with it as well. And now that's it for today's video. Tomorrow we're going to have fun with another small action. The following day we're going to have another video which showcases another of fiber's superpowers, and we'll have a look at how we can pack in more fiber at dinner time. See you then.